Okay.
Did you just completely cut out inside your shop?
Can you hear me? It's inside of this device right now. Is the device functioning? Okay, good, because I've been wanting to talk to you about some important issues and matters that I wanted to discuss. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. That's what you're on here for, sir. You're going to carry this whole stream. The people aren't here for me. They're here for you.
Okay, great. Now, one of the things I wanted to discuss was that 45 ACP is a little bit lacking in the grain weight. And you could really get a lot more stopping power if you push those grades up a little bit. Maybe something like, I don't know, maybe 44 Magnum.
Is that your spiel? 44 Magnum 2028?
Sorry, I was waiting for a response.
No, I didn't know.
Grain weight's great again.
That's right.
44 Magnum, only the 1911 is superior.
I'm big. You know what? Recent controversy. So I've been shooting 5.7 for a long time. And 5.7, lately, 5.7 gets a lot of hate. I don't know what is going on because, 5.7 eviscerates. So I don't know what people are smoking in terms of, I kill animals with 5.7 and it just evacuates their skull of brains because it mimics the effect of high velocity 5.56 so much. But people really don't like 5.7 because of gel tests.
There is an interesting argument there about gel tests being very deceptive and ruining cartridges, their lifespans, because people don't pick it up, because they see a bad gel test from, X distance and they're like, oh, well, it doesn't perform well in gel. Therefore, it's not going to perform well terminally, right? And they're two very different mediums. Now, on 5.7, for taking out varmints and stuff like that, I feel like that's a great application for it, but I would not want... I'm in the kind of the hate 5.7 camp. For a handgun, I think 9mm and 5.7 do basically the same thing, whatever allows you to put holes where you want them faster. 5.7 might penetrate some body armor. It has a slightly higher capacity, but it's so much more expensive that logistically, for most people, I don't think it makes sense. And then if we move into PDWs or rifles, now, unless you have access to full auto 5.7 PDWs, that's fantastic. But if I'm just running a 9mm carbine or something like that, I'd rather just have 9mm, or I'd rather have a short-barreled 5.56, right? Because I think Smith & Wesson, they just came out with their 5.7 response carbine or something, and it's a 16-inch rifle, right? At that point, I'd much rather carry a 10.5 5.56 than a 16-inch 5.7. I think it has an application. It's just very niche.
Does the 5.7 perform out of a 16-inch barrel with terminal ballistics at all?
I'm sure it's fine.
It's low mass,
Yeah. And it's still I don't even know, out of a 16-inch barrel, it's probably doing what, 2,300 FPS? 2,400 FPS?
Probably more than that.
I'm not a 5.7 expert. But I know that a good 55 grain, a hot M193 out of a 10.5 or 11.5 preferably is doing 2650, with a much bigger projectile that can fragment.
So I felt like the 5.7 examination was always off in the weeds in the wrong direction. Armor piercing capability was always touted. Obviously, it's not going to perform there because it's not a rifle, right? And so handguns always suck. All handguns suck. Anytime that you're killing something with a handgun, it's always going to perform under much worse than a rifle. Where 5.7 comes into play is recoil capacity and weight, and your external ballistic profile. Because it's so flat, it really mimics within short distances. It kind of mimics 5.56. So I used to shoot the Volusia County matches out there with Jack Luba, and they would have some days where we would do bring your own wild gun, just test it out. So we would do these matches with I went with a P90 one time. So it's a 10-inch barrel, and then you can hit with a suppressor on it, so you can actually hear the hits because it's suppressed, but you can hit there were 300-meter standard steel targets, no problem. So the cartridge is really and the holdover is very reminiscent of 5.56. Now where it really shines is the P90 is cool because of the capacity, right, and the rate of fire. It's also, a lot of people don't know, the P90 machine gun is probably one of the most reliable, weapons out there. It's on par with an AK-47. So they just like, I've shot thousands of rounds out of the P90s. I've never had a malfunction, like ever.
Well, if I remember correctly, those are just straight blowback, right? There's no complex mechanism for them. It's just a straight blowback 5.7. Which with 5.7, you don't need that heavy of a bolt to begin with, so it's not like recoil is bad. Now, I actually think that's a great application, right? Full auto, 10-inch SBR, P90, right? High capacity, small, compact form factor. You see them still in use with like Secret Service and stuff like that, or an MP7, where I think 5.7 falls off for most people is again in like a rifle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, rifles no good. I think the P90s were cool because it was just its own. I feel like the P90, it was like a solution for a problem that doesn't exist, So it's just this cool space gun. It doesn't really, it's a lot of firepower, but it's just like a small, heavy, high capacity weapon. Where it really made sense was a pistol, but FN blew it with their 5.7, So those old FN 5.7s, they were always, the weight was good, but they were bulbous. They were huge. They had way high, skyscraper height over bore, and the design was pretty cool. With the the MMP, that MMP 5.7, like that's like a whole. Oh man, I love that pistol. To me, that is like the perfect application of 5.7 because you're going to extend range and you don't have any recoil. Have you shot one of those?
I've shot a 5.7 handgun once, but I've heard good things about the Smith & Wesson, and I know there's a couple others out there, isn't there? PSA has the Rock 5.7, which I haven't shot. I think
the Smith is incredible. Go with the Smith. It's incredible. It's really high quality, and you're going to be able to shoot. It's like shooting a 22, so you can fire it as fast as you want, and the rounds in terms of I'm not across the board advocating 5.7 to be used as a defensive cartridge, but if you kill stuff with 5.7 out of a short barrel, it does one of two things. It's either going to punch a hole like a paper punch, or it's just going to do some wacky, spiral stuff reminiscent of 5.56 in light grain weight. It's going to be one of those two. And if it does the second one, it's pretty devastating for a handgun.
Now, the only thing that, if we're comparing it against handguns, the biggest thing logistically for me, if I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy a 5.7, I'm going to get really good with it. All right, now I need to buy 2,000 rounds of ammo or something. It's great. Now that's, 4 times the cost of, well, not 4 times. I think it's gone down quite a bit. It's like 50, 60 cents a round on the low end right now, somewhere in that range, I think. So it's not horrible because it used to be closer to $1 a round. But I know AAC is making a load for it. You got Fiocchi, a few other guys. So it's not terrible, but it's still 2.5 times cost of 9mm.
You're totally right. You're absolutely right. The cost is prohibitive. It's off the shelf as a practical cartridge. What I'm talking about is just in terms of there's so many new iterations of guns that come out, and new whoop-de-doo designs that get released all the time, and a lot of them don't actually have, even with ammunition, with defensive ammunition. It's like the performance difference is pretty minimal, relatively when you really start to compare, like bodies on the ground and stuff. There's not a whole lot of difference, right? Like there's lots of people that have been killed by FMJ 9mm, and there's it also happens to kill people when it's jacketed hollow point, but the 5.7 extends range, so you can shoot that 5.7 pistol, you can shoot it, you're now with a sidearm, which always sucks anyway. You're never going to have a good sidearm, but you're now doing a shitty job of shooting way farther with way less recoil, and you have 22 chances to be shitty instead of 17 or
15 or 17. Interesting. That is an interesting idea because it does extend the range because you have a much flatter shooting projectile, right? Because you're probably looking at like only a few inches of drop at 100 to 150 yards, whereas the 9mm at like 150 you have like a foot or more.
It's drop. Very similar to 5.56. I haven't looked at a chart in a while, and I haven't shot long distance with 5.7 in a while, but I remember just basically copycatting 16-inch 5.56 holds and hitting stuff out to 300 meters.
Yeah, I'm actually I just pulled it up on AmmoSeek just to see what the low end of 5.7 was right now, and it's actually down to 42 cents a round on the low end. That's not bad. for some of these online retailers. So I mean, that's not horrible because yeah, it did used to be a lot worse. So I mean, now that gets me thinking about buying one of those Smith & Wesson 5.7s, just because for my job I have to review stuff. So it's like, well, I might as well pick something up and shoot something fun out of it, right?
There's probably be good for a new shooter too into a firearm because it's not a violent recoil either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what you were talking about there with all handguns suck to shoot people, right? So whatever you can put the most rounds where you want them the fastest. So essentially, what can you do to get rid of recoil, right? Because it doesn't matter if you shoot somebody. You're never going to have like massive cavitation with a rifle, right? It's never going to happen. You're going to be punching little holes through somebody. They're probably never going to be wearing body armor. If you're going up against people with body armor and you have a handgun, like your day's over, right? I don't think that's a winnable scenario with a handgun in any real situation. So the fact that 5.7 might penetrate some
with a 5.7, you might be able to get a headshot because it's so flat. You probably, I mean, I'm serious. I think it's easier to shoot at distances out to like 150 with a 5.7 on like small, something sub 8-inch target. I think it's easier with the 5.7 than 9mm.
Yeah, I think that's something that I have to test now. Now that you've brought me into that. Did you guys remember that the FK BRNO that did the opposite approach, right? As opposed to making the smallest, lightest projectile go fast, they were like, okay, we're gonna have a hand cannon. It's like 7.5 neck down cartridge or whatnot. That's shooting like a 100 grain projectile at like 2,000 feet per second or something like that. It was like a hybrid hunting / defensive system. I mean, I remember they were marketing it for like dignitary defense and stuff like that because it can actually punch through certain body armor, has a much longer range, can be used to take down bigger targets, stuff like that. I remember there was a big push for that on YouTube because everybody got like the same gun every 6 weeks that they just keep shipping it off to different YouTubers. And they had like this little window to make a video and then launch it.